I got married to Amanda 10 years ago, and our life together was everything I had ever dreamed of. We built our home in Colorado, surrounded by mountains and filled with love. Every morning I would wake up grateful for the woman sleeping next to me. Then Amanda's friend Natalie entered our lives 3 years ago. I noticed how she would brush against me when Amanda wasn't looking, or make suggestive comments disguised as jokes, but I dismissed these red flags. That ordinary Tuesday evening, I had no idea my perfect life was about to shatter like glass. Before I continue this story that changed my life forever, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Trust me, you won't believe what happened next. Amanda and I met during our sophomore year at Colorado State University. I was studying engineering, and she was pursuing a degree in marketing. We bumped into each other at the campus coffee shop when she accidentally spilled her latte on my laptop. Instead of being upset, I found myself captivated by her apologetic smile and warm brown eyes. After I assured her that my computer was fine, we started talking and realized we had been in the same economics class for weeks without noticing each other. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant just off campus. I remember how she twirled her spaghetti perfectly and laughed at my terrible jokes. That night, walking her back to her dorm, I knew she was special. We dated throughout college, supporting each other through finals, internships, and family challenges. After graduation, we moved to Denver together. I proposed 2 years later during a hike at Rocky Mountain National Park at sunrise with the mountains glowing orange behind us. Amanda cried happy tears as she said yes. Our wedding was intimate with just 50 guests at a rustic venue in the mountains. Amanda wore a simple white dress that made her look like an angel. When we exchanged vows, I promised to love, honor, and trust her forever, words I meant with my entire heart. We bought our house 5 years into our marriage. It wasn't huge, but it had a yard for the children we planned to have someday, and an extra bedroom I converted into a home office. We painted every wall ourselves, laughing as we got more paint on each other than on the surfaces. Every corner of our home held a memory, a testament to our partnership. Our routines were comfortable and loving. I would make coffee every morning while Amanda prepared breakfast. We would kiss goodbye when leaving for work and text each other during lunch breaks. Weekends were for hiking, trying new restaurants, or just cuddling on the couch watching movies. It was simple, but it was everything I wanted. Amanda met Natalie at the marketing agency where they both worked. Amanda came home one day, excited about this new friend who was so funny and outgoing. At first, I was happy that Amanda had found a good friend at work. Natalie started joining us for dinner occasionally. And while she was charming and entertaining, something about her made me slightly uncomfortable. Natalie had shoulder-length red hair that she tossed frequently when laughing. She wore bright lipstick and clothes that highlighted her figure. But more than her appearance, it was her behavior that bothered me. She would touch my arm when talking to me, stand just a little too close, or make comments with double meanings while glancing at me to gauge my reaction. About 6 months ago, Natalie went through a bad breakup with her boyfriend of 2 years. Amanda, being the compassionate person she is, became Natalie's primary support system. Suddenly, Natalie was at our house 3 or 4 times a week, often staying for dinner, and sometimes even sleeping in our guest room if she had been drinking. The incidents became more frequent and obvious. Once, when Amanda went to answer the phone in another room, Natalie whispered to me that I must get tired of being with the same woman for so long. Another time, she accidentally walked in on me changing after a shower, apologizing with a smirk that suggested it wasn't accidental at all. I wanted to tell Amanda about these moments, but I worried about how it would sound. Would she think I was overreacting, or worse, that I had encouraged Natalie's behavior somehow? So I kept quiet, hoping Natalie would eventually back off, or that her increasing presence in our lives was just temporary. That Tuesday evening in April started like any other. Amanda and I had dinner together, chicken parmesan that I had prepared. We were clearing the dishes when her phone rang. It was her boss calling about an emergency with a major client. Amanda apologized, explaining she needed to go to the office immediately to handle the situation. "I shouldn't be more than a couple of hours," she said, kissing me quickly before grabbing her purse and car keys. I planned to use the time to work on a project proposal in my home office. About 20 minutes after Amanda left, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found Natalie standing there wearing a tight black dress and holding a bottle of wine. "Is Amanda here?" she asked, though something in her eyes made me think she already knew the answer. "No, she had to go to the office for a work emergency," I replied, keeping my hand on the door, not explicitly inviting her in. Natalie sighed dramatically. "That's actually why I came over. I need her advice on something important." "Mind if I wait for her? She said she'd only be gone for a couple of hours, right?" Before I could respond, she slipped past me into the house, heading straight for the living room as if she lived there. I felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to ask her to leave without seeming rude. After all, she was Amanda's best friend. "I'll just work in my office," I told her. "Help yourself to water or coffee if you want." She smiled, holding up the wine bottle. "Or we could have this while waiting." I declined and retreated to my office, closing the door most of the way. I tried to focus on my work, but knowing Natalie was in the next room made me uneasy. After about an hour of working in my office, I needed to get some water. When I entered the living room, I found Natalie had made herself very comfortable. Her shoes were off, her legs curled under her on our couch, and the wine bottle was already half empty. There was only one glass on the coffee table. She had been drinking alone. "Charles," she exclaimed, her voice slightly slurred. "Finally coming out to keep me company." "Just getting some water," I said, moving directly to the kitchen. I could feel her eyes following me. "You know," she called out, "Amanda talks about you all the time at work. Charles is so smart. Charles is so handy around the house. Charles this, Charles that." I mumbled something non-committal as I filled my glass at the sink. Natalie stood up and followed me into the kitchen, leaning against the counter too close to me. The scent of wine was strong on her breath. "What she doesn't say," Natalie continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, "is whether Charles ever gets bored with his perfect little life." I stepped back, creating space between us. "I'm very happy with Amanda and my life, thanks." "Are you sure about that?" She reached out to touch my arm. "Don't you ever wonder what it would be like with someone else? Someone more adventurous?" I removed her hand from my arm. Firmly, but politely. "Natalie, you're Amanda's friend and you've been drinking. I think you should call a cab and head home. Amanda will probably be back soon, and I need to get back to work." Her expression changed from flirtatious to annoyed. "You think you're too good for me, is that it?" "This isn't appropriate," I said clearly. "I love my wife. I'm going back to my office now." I walked away, hearing her scoff behind me. Back in my office, I closed the door completely this time and tried to refocus on my work. About 15 minutes later, the door swung open. Natalie stood in the doorway, swaying slightly. "You didn't answer my question," she said, stepping into my office uninvited. I stood up from my desk. "Natalie, I think you should leave." Instead of responding, she moved around my desk with surprising speed and pushed herself against me, pressing her lips to mine while grabbing at my shirt. I was so shocked that it took me a second to react. I gripped her arms and pushed her away from me, not roughly but firmly enough to break the contact. "Stop it," I said loudly. "This is completely inappropriate. You need to leave right now." Her face contorted with anger. "Oh, so you think you can just reject me? Do you know how many men would kill to be with me? Natalie, you're drunk and not thinking clearly. This isn't about you. I'm married to your friend. Now please leave our house before this gets any worse." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "You'll regret this, Charles. You have no idea what you just did." She grabbed her purse and stumbled toward the front door. I followed at a distance to make sure she was actually leaving. At the door, she turned back with a look of pure venom. "You're going to be sorry," she said. And then she was gone. I locked the door behind her and leaned against it, my heart racing. What had just happened? I was worried about Natalie driving in her condition, but was equally concerned about what she might do next. I debated calling Amanda, but decided to wait until she got home. This was something I needed to tell her in person. Amanda returned around 11 that night. I was sitting in the living room waiting for her, having spent the last 2 hours rehearsing how to explain what happened with Natalie. "Hey," she said, looking tired as she set down her purse. "Sorry that took so long. The client was really upset, and it took forever to calm them down." Amanda, something happened while you were gone, I began. Natalie came over looking for you. And, before I could finish, Amanda's phone rang. She checked the screen. It's Natalie, she said, then answered. Hey, what's up? I watched as Amanda's expression changed from normal to concerned. She turned away from me, walking into the kitchen for privacy. I could hear her saying, slow down and what, but couldn't make out the full conversation. When she returned several minutes later, her face was pale, and her eyes were hard as she looked at me. Natalie says you assaulted her tonight, she said, her voice trembling. She says she came over looking for me, and you tried to force yourself on her. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? No. That's absolutely not what happened. She was drunk, Amanda. She came onto me and I rejected her. I was just about to tell you when she called. Amanda's expression didn't change. She's crying, Charles. She described exactly what you were wearing, said you cornered her in your office, that she had to fight you off. That's a complete lie. I was nearly shouting now. Yes, she was in my office, but she forced herself on me. I pushed her away and told her to leave. You have to believe me, Amanda. But I could see in her eyes that she didn't. My wife of 10 years, the woman who had promised to trust me forever, was looking at me like I was a stranger, like I was capable of the disgusting behavior Natalie had accused me of. Natalie would never lie about something like this, Amanda said quietly. She's my best friend. And I'm your husband. I was desperate now. You know me. You know I would never do something like that. The argument continued for hours. Amanda refused to believe my version of events. She kept saying, why would she lie? And she was so upset. No matter what I said, no matter how I tried to explain what really happened, Amanda chose to believe Natalie over me. That night, Amanda slept in our guest room. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was living in a nightmare. How could this be happening? How could my wife not trust me? The next day, Amanda barely spoke to me. She left early for work and came home late. This pattern continued for days. When she was home, she kept her distance, watching me with suspicious eyes. I learned that she had told her sister about the accusation, who then told their parents. Suddenly, people who had welcomed me into their family for a decade were treating me like a monster. I tried calling Natalie, hoping to reason with her to understand why she would tell such a destructive lie. She didn't answer my calls. When I texted her pleading for her to tell Amanda the truth, she responded with a single message. Stay away from me, or I'll call the police. The situation at home became unbearable. Amanda consulted with a divorce attorney. I found out when I saw the business card on our kitchen counter. My work suffered as I couldn't concentrate. My boss called me in for a meeting to discuss my declining performance, and I couldn't even explain what was happening without sounding like I was making excuses. Friends started taking sides. Some simply disappeared from our lives, not wanting to be involved in such a messy situation. Others, particularly Amanda's friends, looked at me with undisguised disgust. A few of my own friends tried to support me, but even they seemed uncertain. The what-if hanging unspoken between us. I stopped eating regularly. Sleep became elusive as I replayed that night over and over, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. Should I have refused to let Natalie in? Should I have called Amanda immediately after Natalie left? Would any of that have made a difference? The person I had built my life with, shared my dreams with, no longer trusted me. The pain of that betrayal was almost physical, a constant ache in my chest that never subsided. After 2 weeks of living like ghosts in the same house, I reached out to my brother James. He had always been my rock, the person I turned to when life got tough. I told him everything, my voice breaking as I recounted how my life had fallen apart. Charles, he said after listening patiently, is there any way to prove what really happened? Any evidence at all? I started to say no, then stopped. The security cameras, I said slowly. We have cameras in the living room and at the front door. We installed them last year after that break-in next door. Can you access the footage? James asked. It uploads to the cloud, but Amanda manages the account. I'd need her password. There was a pause before James spoke again. Charles. I know this is ethically complicated, but if the footage could prove your innocence, I knew what he was suggesting. Use Amanda's password to access the footage without her permission. Under normal circumstances, I would never violate her privacy like that. But these weren't normal circumstances. This was about saving my marriage, my reputation, my life as I knew it. The decision to access the security footage without Amanda's knowledge wasn't one I made lightly. For days I wrestled with the ethical implications. Was I stooping to Natalie's level by being dishonest? But as Amanda continued to treat me like a criminal in our own home, as the whispers and judgmental looks from others persisted, I realized I had no choice. I needed the truth to come out. Amanda had always used the same password for most of our home accounts, a combination of her childhood dog's name and the year we met. I felt a stab of guilt as I entered it into the security system's login page, but that guilt was quickly overshadowed by my desperation to clear my name. I navigated to the date of the incident and began reviewing the footage. The living room camera captured Natalie's arrival, showing her confident stride as she entered our home. It showed her making herself comfortable on our couch with the wine bottle. The footage clearly captured our interaction in the living room and kitchen, showing me maintaining distance and her increasingly aggressive behavior. While there was no camera in my office, the living room camera had a partial view of the hallway. It showed Natalie storming out of my office, her face twisted with anger, not fear or distress. Most damning of all, the external camera caught her in our driveway after leaving the house. She wasn't crying or traumatized. Instead, she was on her phone, pacing back and forth, looking calculating rather than victimized. Though I couldn't hear what she was saying, her body language suggested she was formulating a plan, not reporting a traumatic incident. My hands were shaking as I downloaded the relevant clips to my laptop. Here was proof, undeniable visual evidence of what really happened. I felt a surge of relief so powerful, it left me lightheaded. Finally, I could prove my innocence. I spent hours reviewing the footage again and again, making sure I had everything I needed. Then, I prepared to show Amanda. I decided to approach her during the weekend when she wouldn't be rushing to or from work. I connected my laptop to our living room TV so the footage would be clearly visible. Saturday morning, Amanda was having coffee at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone as she had taken to doing to avoid conversation with me. "Amanda," I said, standing in the doorway, "I need to show you something important, please." She looked up, her expression guarded. "What is it?" "Just come to the living room. It will only take a few minutes." She sighed, but followed me. When she saw the laptop connected to the TV, she frowned. "What's this about?" "It's about what really happened with Natalie," I said, my heart pounding. "I know you don't believe me, but I need you to watch this." Before she could object, I pressed play. We watched in silence as the security footage showed Natalie's arrival, her drinking alone, her inappropriate advances toward me, and my clear rejection of them. Amanda's expression changed from skepticism to confusion, then to dawning horror as the truth unfolded before her eyes. When we got to the footage of Natalie in the driveway making what appeared to be calculating phone calls, Amanda covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God," she whispered. When the video ended, the room was silent, except for Amanda's uneven breathing. She looked at me, tears forming in her eyes. "Charles I. I don't know what to say. I should have believed you. I'm so sorry." The validation I had craved for weeks finally arrived, but it felt hollow. Yes, Amanda now knew the truth, but the fact remained when faced with a choice between believing her husband of 10 years or her friend of 3 years, she had chosen the friend. The damage was done. "Why didn't you show me this sooner?" she asked. "I didn't think of the cameras right away," I said truthfully. "And when I did, I had to make the decision to access your account without permission. I didn't want to violate your privacy, but I was running out of options." Amanda called Natalie, immediately putting the call on speaker. When Natalie answered, Amanda's voice was ice cold. "I've seen the security footage, Natalie. I know what really happened." There was a long pause before Natalie responded. "Amanda, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you lied about my husband assaulting you. How you tried to destroy my marriage." "He rejected me," Natalie suddenly shouted, dropping all pretense. "Do you know how humiliating that was? Perfect Charles, so devoted to his precious Amanda that he wouldn't even look at another woman." Amanda was visibly shaking. You were supposed to be my friend. You lied about being sexually assaulted. Do you know how serious that is? Not just what you did to Charles and me, but how accusations like that hurt real victims. Natalie's response was a jumble of weak excuses and deflections. She claimed she had been too drunk to know what she was doing, that she felt rejected and humiliated, that she had personal issues she was working through. Not once did she offer a genuine apology. Amanda ended the call and turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I am so sorry, Charles. I should have trusted you. I should have known you would never do something like that. I wanted to feel relief, to embrace my wife and begin healing, but the wound was still raw. You've known me for 12 years, Amanda. You promised to trust me. Yet you were ready to throw away our marriage based on an accusation without any evidence. I know, she sobbed. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But please, can we try to work through this? I agreed to try, though part of me wondered if our relationship could ever truly recover. Amanda cut all contact with Natalie, blocking her number and social media accounts. She told her family and friends the truth, trying to restore my reputation. Slowly, tentatively, we began rebuilding. Then, 3 weeks later, Amanda received an email from Natalie that bypassed the blocks she had put in place. She showed it to me, her hands trembling. Natalie says she's depressed and having suicidal thoughts, Amanda explained. She says she needs to talk to me in person to apologize properly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and you believe her. After everything she did, I don't know what to believe, Amanda admitted. But if she really is in that dark of a place, this is another manipulation, I said firmly. She's trying to get your attention, to worm her way back into your life. We argued about it for days. I couldn't understand how Amanda could even consider seeing Natalie again after what she had done to us. Then Amanda dropped the bombshell. I've booked a flight to Phoenix next weekend, she said. I need to see Natalie and make sure she's okay. I need to get closure. You're choosing her again, I said, my voice hollow with disbelief. After everything, you're still putting her before us. It's not like that, Amanda insisted. This isn't about choosing sides. It's about making sure someone doesn't harm themselves. And what about the harm she caused us? What about the harm you caused by not believing me? Does that not matter? Amanda went on the trip despite my objections. It was the second betrayal, and in some ways it hurt even more than the first. She chose to console the person who had tried to destroy our lives, rather than focus on healing the damage that had been done to our marriage. While she was gone, I packed some clothes and moved temporarily into an extended stay hotel. I needed space to think, to decide if this relationship was still worth fighting for. I loved Amanda deeply, but I wasn't sure if I could ever fully trust her again. The foundation of our marriage had been cracked, and I wasn't certain it could be repaired. During those weeks apart, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in trust issues and betrayal trauma. Dr. Harper helped me process the complex emotions I was experiencing: anger at Natalie for her lie, disappointment in Amanda for her lack of trust, and grief for the relationship I feared was lost. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, Dr. Harper told me during one session. It's rebuilt through consistent actions over time. The question is whether you're willing to give Amanda the chance to prove herself trustworthy again. I reconnected with friends who had stood by me during the accusation. My brother James invited me over for dinner regularly, providing a sense of normalcy when everything else felt chaotic. I started taking better care of myself, going to the gym, eating properly again, focusing on my work. Amanda returned from her trip with surprising insights. Natalie had continued to manipulate her, making the entire weekend about her own pain, rather than taking responsibility for her actions. It finally opened Amanda's eyes to who Natalie really was. I should have listened to you, she told me during one of our careful, measured conversations. She made the whole thing about her suffering, how hard this has been for her. Not once did she show genuine remorse for what she did to us. Amanda began making consistent efforts to rebuild our relationship. She suggested couples therapy, gave me access to all her accounts to show she had nothing to hide, and patiently respected my need for space. She wrote me a long letter detailing all the reasons she should have trusted me, acknowledging her failure, and promising to do better. Slowly, cautiously, I began to consider reconciliation. We started with small steps, coffee dates where we talked honestly about our feelings, dinner once a week, occasional texts throughout the day. It was like dating again, but with the heavy knowledge of what we had been through. 3 months after I moved out, I decided to give our marriage another chance. I moved back into our house, though we continued to maintain some emotional boundaries as we rebuilt trust. It wasn't easy. There were nights I would wake up remembering how quickly Amanda had believed the worst of me, days when I questioned if I was making the right decision. But there were also moments of connection that reminded me why I had fallen in love with Amanda in the first place. Her determination to make things right, her willingness to take responsibility for her mistake, her patience with my healing process, all showed a depth of character that still deserved my consideration. Throughout this ordeal, I learned valuable lessons that will stay with me forever. I learned the importance of trusting my instincts about people, of establishing clear boundaries, and of standing up for myself even when it's difficult. I learned that evidence matters in today's world where accusations can spread faster than truth. I learned that forgiveness is not a single act, but a process that takes time and effort from both parties. Most importantly, I learned that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control how we respond to betrayal and adversity. The strength I found within myself during this challenging time was something I never knew I possessed. Today, our marriage is different than it was before. In some ways, it's stronger, built on a more realistic understanding of each other's capabilities and limitations. In other ways, it carries the scars of what we went through. But we continue to choose each other day by day, working to rebuild what was damaged and create something new from the pieces. The truth always finds its way to the surface eventually. No lie, no matter how convincing, can stand forever against reality. I hold on to this belief as Amanda and I continue our journey of healing and reconciliation. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have been able to forgive and rebuild, or would the betrayal have been too great to overcome? Have you ever been falsely accused or had your trust broken? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit from hearing it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it provides some insight or comfort if you're facing your own challenges with betrayal and trust.